Sam had been working on the ranch for days, with the hot sun beating down on his back and the dry wind blowing across the dusty plains. As a cowboy, this was nothing new to him. He was used to long hours in the saddle and the constant demands of ranch life, but today he had decided to take a break from the usual chores. He had set his sights on hunting, hoping to bring back some fresh meat for dinner. The plan was simple. Sam knew the area well and had hunted in these parts many times before. It was a familiar routine for him. Find some game, make a quick kill, and return to the ranch before dark. He saddled up his horse and grabbed his rifle, eager for the solitude the hunt would provide. There was something about being out in the wilderness, far from the noise and chaos of the ranch, that gave him peace. As Sam rode out, the land stretched out before him, endless and quiet. He loved the wide open spaces. The air smelled fresh, mixed with the earthy scent of sagebrush and dust. The sun was high in the sky, and the shadows were long as he rode through the hills and valleys, scanning the landscape for any signs of wildlife. Hours passed, and Sam had not spotted a single animal. The heat was beginning to wear on him, but he refused to give up. He needed to bring something back to the ranch, or else the cook would be upset. As he made his way down a narrow ravine, he heard a rustling sound. Sam's heart quickened, and he pulled the reins of his horse to a stop. There, standing in the shadows of the trees, was a young woman. At first, Sam thought he had imagined it, but no. There she was, watching him with cautious eyes. She was tall, with long black hair that shimmered in the sunlight. She wore simple clothing, a leather vest and a skirt that reached her knees, but her presence was commanding. Her face was both beautiful and fierce, and Sam knew immediately that she was no ordinary woman. "Who are you?" Sam asked, his voice low and steady, trying not to startle her. The woman didn't speak at first. She only stood there, staring at him, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. Sam's hand instinctively went to his rifle, though he didn't want to make any sudden moves. He had heard rumors about the Apache people, but he had never had any direct contact with them before. "I am Ayanna," the woman finally said, her voice calm but firm. "I am from the Apache tribe." Sam was taken aback. He had heard of the Apache people, of course. They were known for their strength and their independence. Sam had always respected them from a distance, but he had never expected to meet one face to face, especially not out here in the wilderness. "What are you doing out here?" Sam asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Ayanna didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes scanning him as if trying to figure out who he was. She seemed cautious, yet there was a hint of curiosity in her gaze. Sam felt a strange pull toward her, but he wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, or the fact that she wasn't afraid of him. Either way, something in her made him want to know more. "I was scouting for my people," Ayanna said after a moment, "but the storm came and I got separated from them." Sam glanced up at the sky. The clouds were gathering quickly and the wind had picked up. He could feel the temperature dropping and he knew a storm was on the way. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Sam said, concern edging his voice. "It's going to get bad soon." Ayanna nodded. "I know." Sam knew he couldn't just leave her out there. He might not know much about the Apache people, but he knew enough to understand that being caught alone in the wilderness was dangerous for anyone. "Come with me," Sam said. "I have a cabin not far from here. It's not much, but it'll keep you out of the storm." Ayanna hesitated, her gaze flickering between Sam and the darkening sky. Sam could see that she was weighing her options, but after a long moment, she finally nodded. "Lead the way," she said quietly. The two of them rode through the ravines, with Sam guiding the way as Ayanna followed. The storm was fast approaching and the wind howled through the trees. Sam urged his horse on, desperate to reach the cabin before the storm hit. Ayanna kept a steady pace behind him, her horse never wavering despite the growing intensity of the storm. By the time they reached the cabin, the sky had darkened and the first drops of rain began to fall. Sam led Ayanna inside where they took shelter from the storm. The small cabin was barely more than a shack, but it was enough to keep them dry. Sam started a fire in the small stove and the warmth began to fill the room. Ayanna stood near the fire, her clothes wet from the rain. Sam offered her a blanket, and she accepted it with a quiet nod. The tension between them was palpable, but neither of them spoke for a long time. Sam didn't know what to say, and Ayanna seemed lost in her thoughts. Finally, Sam broke the silence. "So you're the daughter of the Apache chief?" Ayanna nodded. "Yes, my father is the leader of our people." I am his daughter, but I do not always agree with his ways. Sam raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Ayanna looked into the fire, her expression distant. My father believes in war. He believes we must fight for everything, even if it means losing everything. But I do not want that. I want peace. Sam couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for her. She was strong, independent, and had a fire within her that Sam recognized. It was the same kind of fire that had kept him going through the hardships of ranch life. For the rest of the evening, Sam and Ayanna talked. She told him stories of her tribe, of her father's leadership, and of the traditions that had been passed down through generations. Sam listened, fascinated by her words. He had never met anyone like her before. As the night wore on, the storm outside grew fiercer, and the wind howled through the cracks in the cabin. Sam knew they would be stuck there for the night, but for the first time in a long while, he didn't mind. There was something comforting about Ayanna's presence, something that made him feel like he wasn't so alone in the world. The fire crackled, and the wind howled outside, but inside the cabin, Sam and Ayanna sat in silence, the weight of their shared understanding hanging between them. Neither of them knew what the future held, but for now they were safe, and that was enough. The morning sun broke through the thick clouds, casting a soft golden light over the land. The storm had passed, but the wind still carried the scent of rain. Sam woke up early, stretched his stiff muscles, and went to check on the fire. The crackling of the embers was the only sound in the quiet cabin. He had offered Ayanna a blanket last night, but she had chosen to sleep near the fire, her eyes closed but her mind clearly awake. Ayanna stirred as Sam moved around. She sat up slowly, her dark eyes locking onto his. For a moment they just stared at each other, neither sure what to say. The night had been filled with strange quietness, but now, with the storm behind them, the tension between them seemed heavier than ever. You're up early, Ayanna said, her voice soft but steady. She seemed as though she had been thinking about something deeply, her face carrying the weight of an unspoken question. Sam smiled a little, trying to break the quiet. I'm used to early mornings. I don't sleep much when I'm alone out here. Ayanna nodded, but there was something in her expression that made Sam think she wasn't just talking about the weather or the storm. There was more to her than she had let on. She seemed to carry a burden, a mix of responsibility and a desire for something different from what her life had always been. He didn't press her for answers, not yet. Instead, Sam walked over to the table and began gathering his gear. He needed to get back to the ranch, but he knew Ayanna couldn't go back to her tribe yet. The thought of her returning alone to a place where she might not be welcome felt wrong to him, especially after they had shared so much the night before. I'm going to head out soon, Sam said, gathering his rifle and a few other supplies. I'll take you with me. I know the way to the nearest Apache camp. Ayanna stood up, her face unreadable. She had said little, but Sam could sense that she wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea of returning to her people. He could see it in the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her skirt. I'm not sure that's a good idea, she replied, her voice tight. My people, they will not welcome you, especially not if you're bringing me back. They'll think I've betrayed them. Sam hesitated, his hand resting on the doorframe as he thought. He had known that returning her to her tribe wouldn't be easy. Apache customs were strict, and a runaway chief's daughter could bring shame upon her family. Still, he wasn't about to leave her out here alone. Maybe, Sam said slowly. But you can't stay out here by yourself, not with the way things are. You don't have to face them alone. Ayanna looked at him then, and Sam saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, uncertainty, but maybe even a little hope. She had been taught to survive, to live by the strict rules of her tribe. But something in Sam's words made her question those teachings. I don't belong with them, Ayanna whispered, almost to herself. I never have. Sam didn't say anything for a moment. He knew that words weren't enough to change what was in her heart, but he could offer his company, his understanding. He knew what it was like to feel torn between two worlds, one that expected everything of you, and another that seemed so different but also so inviting. If you want to go back, I'll take you, Sam said finally, his voice steady. But it's your choice. I'll respect whatever you decide. For a long time, Ayanna didn't answer. She simply stood there, looking out the window at the wide open plains. Sam waited, giving her the space she needed. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was a moment of understanding. Finally, Ayanna turned back to Sam. "I'll go with you," she said, her voice firm but quiet. "I just don't know what will happen when we get there." Sam gave her a reassuring nod. "We'll deal with it when we get there, together." They packed up their things and Sam led the way out of the cabin, his horse tethered nearby. Ayanna climbed onto her own horse, a look of determination on her face. The ride back was slow and quiet, with Sam leading the way through the hills and valleys while Ayanna followed closely behind. The wind had picked up again and the air was cool. The land seemed to stretch out endlessly before them, but the journey ahead felt heavier than it had the day before. The closer they got to the Apache camp, the more tense Sam became. He could sense the danger lurking in the air. He had heard stories about Apache warriors, how they protected their land and their people fiercely. He wasn't sure how the tribe would react to him bringing their chief's daughter back, especially after she had gone off alone into the wilderness. Ayanna was silent, her face tense as they approached the camp. Sam glanced over at her, but she didn't seem scared. In fact, she seemed almost resigned, as though she had accepted the fate that awaited her. She wasn't just the daughter of the Apache chief. She was a part of a world that Sam didn't fully understand. As they entered the camp, the air seemed to change. The tribal warriors were everywhere, their faces stern and watchful. Sam kept his eyes on the ground, trying not to draw attention to himself. Ayanna, on the other hand, sat up straighter, her gaze fixed ahead as she rode toward the center of the camp. When they reached the heart of the camp, the Apache chief himself appeared, his tall figure looming over them. His eyes were sharp, scanning Sam with the intensity of someone who had lived a life filled with conflict and survival. Sam's heart raced as the chief's gaze landed on Ayanna. "Ayanna," the chief said, his voice low and commanding. "Where have you been? You've disappeared for days. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ayanna didn't flinch, but her shoulders stiffened. "I was lost, father," she replied calmly. "I wasn't sure if I would make it back." The chief turned his gaze toward Sam then, his eyes narrowing. "And this man, what is he to you?" Before Ayanna could respond, Sam stepped forward. "I found her alone in the wilderness," he said. "I couldn't leave her there. She's the daughter of a great leader and I meant no harm." The chief studied Sam for a long time, his expression unreadable. Finally he nodded. "You're lucky you came back with her. I might have had you killed for this." He looked at Ayanna again, his face softening. "But I see you've made your choice." Ayanna's father didn't say much more, but Sam knew the chief's judgment was not easy to win. Ayanna had chosen to return, but it wasn't just about her survival anymore. It was about her future. The tension between Sam and Ayanna's people had only just begun, but for now, they both stood together, ready to face whatever came next.